This is your review video for your quiz that I'm going to give on January 8th about functions. So we did a lot of different things about functions this week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you two functions on the test, and I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about them, okay? Because we spend time finding features of the graph, and we spend time comparing graphs, and we spend time finding average rate of change with our functions. So we're doing all of this from an equation and a table. I didn't use the graph itself. And we're going to answer all of those different questions about the same two functions throughout the entire quiz. So first question I want to ask is, which of these functions has a greater initial value? So initial value, I think you guys could see that right away. So the initial value here is 3. If my pen works, I could do it. Here is 3, and over here is 40. Okay, that's the initial value. So I know the initial value of this equation is 3. Initial value of this function is 40. How do I know that? Because that first letter in the equation is always my initial value. My initial value is the place where x is equal to 0. That's how I identified it on the table. So which one has the greater initial value? I would say g of x. Right, that function in the table is called g of x. That has the greater initial value. Then I'll ask you to compare the factor. Okay, so the constant factor in the equation, you see it right here. It's 4. In the table, I don't see what the factor is. I have to check. What am I multiplying by as I go down from 40 to 20? As I go down from 40 to 20, well, like I said, I went down, so I'm not multiplying by 2. I'm not doubling it, right? I'm not multiplying by a number greater than 1 and going up. I'm going down. It's almost like divide by 2, but I want to factor, so I'm going to say I multiply that by a half. 40 times 1/2. 20 times 1/2 got me to 10. 10 times 1/2 gets you to 5, okay? So the factor here is 1/2. So if I ask you, which function has the smaller factor, you're going to tell me g of x, because 1/2 is smaller. If I ask you which function has the greater factor, you would tell me f of x, because f of x has 4, which is greater than 1/2. Then we have another question where I'll ask you, it's not the exact same quiz for honors and non-honors, so I'll just go through everything. So on one of them I ask, which function is decreasing? So g of x, the one that's multiplied by 1/2, that's the decreasing function, right? It's getting smaller, so that's your decreasing function. Then after that, we'll go into average rate of change. So for average rate of change, I'm going to clear this. You are going to use the same exact functions, but I'm asking you something totally different. Average rate of change. So if I ask you with an equation for an average rate of change, I'll give you an interval. So let's say I want from 0 to 3. So what do you have to do? You know you have to put those two values into that equation and get outputs. So I'll make a little table for myself from 0 to 3. So that means I want an input of 0 and I want an input of 3. When I put an input of 0 into this function, 3 times 4 to the 0 power, you can put that in a calculator if you like, and the answer is going to be 3, because the input of 0, that means the initial value, which is 3. Input of 3, so I'm taking 3 times 4 to the 3rd power. You can put that in a calculator if you want, if you know how to do that without the calculator. That's great. Do 3 times 4 to the 3rd power. That's like multiplying 3 times 4 times 4 times 4 again, and you get 192. Okay? So if it's increasing from 3 to 192, then it went up 189. Okay? And that was over an interval on my x-axis of 3. So if I'm looking for average rate of change, I'm not looking at the factor, what I'm multiplying anymore. I'm looking at how much I added. Okay, how much did it go up in that portion of the graph? It went up 189 over an interval of 3. And if you divide 189 divided by 3, I believe it's 63. So that would be the average rate of change, okay? Then if I want to do it from a table, I'm finding on the same interval from 0 to 3. Okay, this is a different function, but I'm showing you how I would do it on the table. I would find x is 0 and x is 3, and those are the 2 points I'm looking at. So from 40 to 5, I see it went down 35. From 0 to 3, it went up 3. So over here, my average rate of change, again, is change in the outputs, negative 35, divided by change in the inputs, which is 3. Negative 35 divided by 3, and if you solve that, well, I know 33 divided by 3 is 11, and then I have another 2/3. It's negative 11 and 2/3. If you would have put that in the calculator, you would get negative 11.6 repeating. Okay, so that's how we find average rate of change with these two functions. I hope that was clear. If there's anything else you have questions about, let me know. The quiz does include a little bit more. That's from the lesson that I'm going to teach tomorrow, so I'm not going to show it here. Okay, so feel free to email me with any questions. Have a great night.